So why the need to raise the retirement age from 60 to 65 if there are so many pilots? Welcome to another video. Thanks for joining me in this one. In this video, I'll be sharing with you some of the details behind the proposed increase in pilot retirement age from 65 to 67. If you've seen my previous video on this subject, I talked about some of the points and some of the reasons why this is happening, the benefits to the airlines and maybe the benefits to the pilots. But I also want to take us back to a point in time when the retirement age was officially 60, and I wanted to let you know what was happening at the time and also the consequences of that increase from 60 at that time to 65. If you're new here, my name is Stephen Ojo, and on this channel we'll talk about aviation, and precisely we talk more on how you can focus on becoming a pilot, achieving your goals. And I hope that you are staying by subscribing. And if you're new, please don't forget to leave your comments. I try to respond as much as I can, based on timing, and you can connect with me on my Instagram page as well. Most importantly, don't forget to drop those likes to let me know that you found value in this one so that I can share more information like this in the future. So in order to understand why pilots age was raised from 60 to 65 back in 2007, we need to look at some of the reasons that were brought up at the time. So there was what they called Age Discrimination in Employment Act, which was made in 1967. That act was solely there to prevent discrimination amongst certain age groups when it comes to employment. The goal is to have an equal employment opportunity for everybody. But of course, at a certain age, there's always that decline in cognitive ability, physical ability, and so forth. So there was a mandatory retirement age of about 65 at the time. But there was an exemption in the act that excluded pilots from that, which forced pilots to retire at the age of 60. On the pilot side, they felt they were discriminated at because of that exemption. The other point that led to this increase was that, back in, the 60s and 70s and 80s, there was so much limited development in the technologies on board, like the avionics system, the FMS system, so the navigation and so forth. And due to those old systems on board, they needed pilots that were mostly able, both cognitively and physically, and fit pretty much. And that's why, back in time, majority of pilots were from the military side. But with the improvement in technology and advancement in technology and autopilots and so forth, they realized that we could take the benefits of those technology and make use of it in the areas where the humans can be, maybe less able. The other point was pilot shortage. And at the time, they claimed there were no qualified pilots. And this is the area that I believe that we need to focus on, because it's similar to what we're experiencing now in 2023, which we know that a lot of airlines are short of pilots, pilots are being paid more, and so forth because of the shortage. Now, but before we get into the details of that, let's talk about the pilot shortage at the time in 2007. If you guys remember the 9/11 attack on the US soil, this led to a lot of airlines pretty much going bankrupt because the flying public became scared and they stopped flying, and the airlines were staffed. At this time, they were making money. There were so many airlines at the time. But between 2001 and 2008, prior to the market crash, so many airlines, including major airlines, almost all of them declared bankruptcy. I'm sure if you think through this, right? The retirement age was raised from 60 to 65 in 2007. This was prior to the 2008, but of course after 2001. If anything, there were so many pilots on ground because between 2001 and 2005, over 6,000 pilots were followed amongst all the major airlines in the United States. So why the need to raise the retirement age from 60 to 65 if there are so many pilots? If you take a moment to think about that, it goes back to politics and money. Now, I'm not going to focus more on, who is wrong, who is right here. But the point I'm trying to draw out of that event is to be able to infer on what we're experiencing now as well. Maybe you can also think about what could potentially happen depending on how this proposed plan to increase age from 65 to 67 could go, and and also the proposed plan to reduce the aeronautical experience required to fly for the airlines. Now, according to the first Senate hearing of the proposal to change the retirement age for pilots from 60 to 65 back in 2005, there was certain information that was shared during that hearing. And one of it, like I already mentioned, was the age discrimination factor. If a pilot is forced to retire at the age of 60, that means they would have to wait, 5 to 7 years before they can start getting their Social Security benefit. And during that time, majority of the airlines have declared bankruptcy, which meant that they wrote off some of their pensions, which meant some of these pilots, after a very long career, most likely successful one, they are forced to start dipping into their savings and their own earned money, or that they've worked for, because airlines weren't providing any support. The government would not provide much support because the Social Security benefits would not kick in until the age of 65. So they felt that there was this gap that the pilots were left to fend for themselves. Now, another interesting point that was made was, according to this, and I quote, "The fact is, several studies have shown that older pilots have better safety records than their younger colleagues, and that pilots 60 years or older tend to be healthier than their cohorts in the population at large." And I continue. It says, "The FAA age 60 rule is an ancient relic of a bygone era in which one airline in 1959, seeking relief from a labor dispute, curried political favor and forced the implementation of a rule which served to shove its older pilots out the door." But because of this age limit that was raised on the retirement age from 60 to 65, it bought a lot of people an extra 5 years that were about to retire. But also, it also meant that people that were followed were stuck out waiting until there is a need for them much longer. But here comes the kicker. In 2008, we had the financial crisis and things turned around again, which meant more airlines followed, which also meant that those people that were supposed to be recalled, right, couldn't get called back. Now, the issue with all of this is that airlines started offering pilots peanuts, especially on the regional side. It got so bad that regional pilots at the time were living on food stamps. Okay, with your family of 3, family of 4, a lot of people quit the aviation industry to pursue other career, because at that point you have over 5,000 or 6,000 pilots followed. You have pilots that are even working, making peanuts, and at the end of the day, a lot of people gave up on the dream of pursuing the career. Now, come 2017, 2018, when the shortage of pilots became a thing, before the COVID, of course, the aviation industry, the regions especially, started paying out these bonuses, started giving out this money, because they had forced a lot of people out of the industry. They were, like I said, 5 years prior to that time, I remember when I started, and I'm not sure if you've seen that video, I was making $22 an hour, something like that, right? And there were no bonuses. So you can imagine how this had pissed off a lot of people that were pursuing the career, and so many people with their ratings ended up giving it up. But at the end of the day, this problem didn't just develop overnight. It was a problem that was created back in 2005. And the reason is because when you pay a lot of people peanuts, it discourages a lot of people from getting into the career. The other part that we need to watch out for is the ability for them to reduce the aeronautical experience required. And I believe that can be at a disadvantage to everyone in the industry, especially. I don't really care about the 2 years being given on the retirement age, but the aeronautical experience is something that I believe that, don't get me wrong, I care about the 65 to 67, but more importantly, I think I care more about the aeronautical experience, because everyone has got to go through the process of, getting the experience and becoming a better pilot. Now, they can argue that yes, by reducing it, they will compensate by increasing training.